Hello, afternoon to you all. Today, our conversation will be on South Africa. What is happening in South Africa right now? What is happening in South Africa right now? The group that called themselves Xenopia is very bad. Today in South Africa, there are clean blacks seizing the business of the blacks, beating them massively. Why? That's very bad. Why is Africa always behind? Why is Africa always behind? Why? Africa, we are black colors. We have to respect blacks. African, clean and African. African, torturing an African. African, hating an African. While we, the African, supposed to be one people. Let us assist to each other. Let's try to develop ourselves. Wherever African goes, always maltreated by others. One, they maltreated by the Africans themselves. Oh, sorry, let me check the mic. Yeah, why? Let me check my mic, whether it's working or not. First, before I start my life. The noise is too bad. The network is too bad. Hello. Hello, hello, hello. What's wrong with the network? No? Hello, 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 hello. Okay, yeah, okay. So let's come to let's come to the appetite when South Africa was having a war. When South Africa was having a war, like how many African countries helped them in that war, and what did they contribute in the war? What did African countries help them? So let's go. Yeah. Apartheid meaning separateness in Africans was a legalized system of extreme racial ag- segregation and white supremacy enforced by the National Party government in South Africa from 1948 until 1994. It classified citizens by race, mandated residential separation, restricted unrestricted non-white movements, and denied black South Africans citizenship and voting rights, causing immense suffering until its abolition. Until its abolition. So, key components of apartheid: racial classification. The Population Registration Act of 1950 forced every South African into racial categories: white, color, mixed race, Asian, or native black. I just want to tell you that South Africans, I mean, some of the South Africans has forget how Africans helped them when they were in difficulties. Now they are fighting their own brothers and sisters, killing them, seizing their businesses, burning their businesses, and torturing them, uh, telling them that they have to go back to their countries to develop their countries. How many South Africans are in Africa, different countries in Africa? Did they forget that? And when they were suffering, how many African countries have contributed in them just to fight for their freedom? Did they forget that? So let's go for the appetite. Racial classification. The Population Register Act of 1954 every South African into racial categories: white collar, mixed race, Asian, or native black. Segregation and disposition. The Group Areas Act of 1950 designated distinct residential areas for each race. Over 3.5 million people were forcibly removed from their homes, and 80% of the land was reserved for the white minority. By that time, all the lands, 80% of it, were reserved for the white, and the 20% only was for the blacks. Good, let's go. Pity and grand appetite. Pity appetite segregated public facilities, bathroom, schools, buses, while grand appetite focused on separating black South Africans into im- impoverished, impoverished homelands or Bantustans, denying them national rights. Let me tell you one thing about blacks. Blacks can fight his brother, his own brother and sister just for one thing. What's that? Because of money. Because of money. But white, they are trying to unite. That's why every white country in the world is developed because of their unity. But blacks, every African country are separate. We are fighting each other, killing each other, we don't respect each other, jealousy, hatred, insult, and whenever we are in a position, we use that position to harass our own brothers and sisters, which is very bad. White, why they have the power? Because of their unity. Because of their unity. Today, let's continue. Um, Pass laws. The 1952 Pass Laws Act required black Africans to carry documents to enter white areas, resulting in millions of arrests and strict control over daily life and resistance. Oppression. The system created a rigid hierarchy, ensuring whites control the economy, jobs, and education. Example, the 1953 Bantu Education Act. By that time, blacks were not allowed to go to school. They were not allowed to work in their restaurant in South Africa. I mean. They were not allowed to work in restaurant. They were not allowed to work where they have good salaries. So what they used to do is the whites are the one working in those good jobs like the restaurant, hotels, governments, and other good places. And there was a place where there is no there is no black allowed to go there in that place. They don't allow blacks to go there. and there were blacks who were working for the whites, fighting their own brothers, black brothers and sisters. So let's go. Resistance was constant, including the 1960 Saville massacre, where 69 people were killed, and the 1976 Soweto Operation Spark by students protesting mandatory African instruction. International action. The UN denounced apartheid in 1973, and by the 1980s, international pressure, including sanctions from the US and UK, mounted. The end of apartheid in 1990 to 1994. Negotiation. President F.W. de Klerk began dismantling the system, lifting bans on black political parties and releasing Nelson Mandela in 1990. Look at that. They sanctioned all blacks to contest. Why? Why? Democracy now. A new constitution was adopted in 1993, and in 1994 South Africa held its first non-racial democratic election with Nelson Mandela elected as the first black president in South Africa. 3 decades after its end, South Africa is still dealing with the consequences of apartheid. Still, because I was watching a movie, not a movie, I can call it a movie because it's not a movie, where are forcing a black man, putting him in a coffin, putting him in a coffin and want to burn him. So where are the blacks in South Africa? And now they are telling you that the 75% of the country's population is black now, but they have no democracy. A new constitution was adopted in 1993 and 1994. South Africa held its first non-racial democratic election with Nelson Mandela elected as the first black president. Legacy. 3 decades after its end, South Africa is still dealing with the consequences of apartheid. It is considered one of the most in unequal countries in the world, with the majority of wealth still held by a small, formerly privileged minority. So, this is Africa. This is Africa. The Africa we are. So, what? So, let's go. Um, the countries that fight for South Africa to get their freedom. Several African countries provided critical support to South Africa's liberation struggle, ranging from hosting military bases to providing financial aid and diplomatic pressure. Did the youths of South Africa forget this day? Of course, yes, they forgot it. The most prominent were the frontline states. an alliance specifically formed to coordinate responses to appetite and support liberation movement like the African National Congress, that's ANC, and the Pan Africanist Congress. So let's go. Key supporting countries. While support came from many nations through the Organization of African Unity (OAU) by that time, these countries were particularly instrumental. The frontline states core members: 1. Zambia served as the ANC's headquarters in exile, Lusaka, and hosted major military camps. 2. Tanzania provided critical bases for training and served as a secondary headquarters for both the ANC and PAC. These countries are the one who give South Africa liberty today, the freedom they have today. Tanzania. Now, let's go to Angola. Hosted several ANC military training camps for their armed wing on Omkonto, we Siswi, MK. Mozambique provided safe houses and transit routes for freedom fighters until the mid 1980s. Zimbabwe, after gaining independence in 1980, it became a strategic ally, although it faced intense military destabilization from South Africa for doing so. Botswana acted as a primary conduit for activists entering and exiting South Africa clandestinely. Nations providing strategic and financial aid for South Africa for them to have their freedom. I mean the blacks, but today they forget it, don't they? Nigeria. Nigeria, though not geographically nearby, Nigeria was a frontline state. Its spread providing millions in annual financial support and thousands of scholarships to South African students. They also chaired the UN Special Committee Against Apartheid for 30 years. Look at that. So they forget this day. You can to Ethiopia. Provided military training to Nelson Mandela in 1962 and issued him the passport he used to travel the world seeking support. Africa. They easily forget when you help them. Algeria provided military intelligence and early financial aid to the ANC. Lib- Libya provided significant financial and military logistical support under Muammar Gaddafi to South Africa. Now, let's go to the neighboring countries that underground support are Lesotho and Eswatini, Swaziland. Despite being economically dependent on the apartheid government, they provided refuge for activists and served as vital transit points for moving weapons and messaging into South Africa. Africa. Risks and sacrifice. Many of these countries paid a high price for their support. The apartheid regime conducted cross-border raid, bombing, and assassinations in Zambia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique to intimidate them into stopping their support. Hmm? This is how South Africa can pay Africans now. The use of South Africa. This is how they can pay Africans. Without Africans, South Africa would not be the way it is today. Africans give them that money that they develop their countries. African help them with military support. African help them with weapons to fight the anti-black by that time. And now, what South African youths can pay the Africans is to blow them, killing them, seizing their businesses, deporting them, harassing them, doing all types of maltreat to them, which is very bad. I think it's better for them to turn back. Yeah, thank you. That's the life. Thank you very much. I think I have to end this live here and have it in my TikTok. Thank you.